A journey back through time. Close your eyes, take a slow, gentle breath, and imagine yourself walking through an old wooden door. The hinges creak softly as you step into a world hundreds of years behind us. Medieval Europe. There, in small villages wrapped in morning mist, along narrow cobblestone paths, lived the women of that era, quiet, resilient, and carrying burdens we today can hardly imagine. This is not a story about queens or princesses. This is a story about ordinary women, women who had to live, endure, and survive in a time shaped by hardship. Let this narration guide you, slowly, gently, through the dust of history, so you can understand what women in the Middle Ages had to endure. The beginning of a predetermined life. Inside a small wooden house, its walls made of packed earth, lit only by a thin sliver of morning light, a baby girl takes her first breath. Her cry, fragile and trembling, echoes softly, then quickly disappears into the cramped space where the smell of dry straw and smoke seems to swallow every sound. In the Middle Ages, this moment, the moment a girl opened her eyes, already meant something. Her life had been decided long before she could speak. No one asked who she wanted to become. No one asked what she liked or disliked. Dreams were not something a girl was encouraged to have. Society simply had no room for the dreams of women. In her earliest years, she stayed close to her mother. She watched her tend the fire, knead dough, carry water from the well, feed the chickens, and mend her father's worn tunic. And even before fully understanding the world, she learned a quiet truth. One day, all of this will be your duty. There were no fancy toys, no carefree afternoons running in the fields. Childhood, if it even existed, was painfully short. By the age of 5 or 6, the girl began taking on small chores, gathering firewood, rinsing vegetables, sweeping the dirt floor, holding her baby siblings, or clearing bowls after meals. There was no option to refuse, for in that society a child was not simply a child, but a tiny worker in the household. Around age 7, she reached what the medieval world considered old enough to start a woman's life. From then on, she moved from watching to truly working, learning to weave at an old creaking loom, where every turn carried the exhaustion of generations, learning to knead dough with clumsy but determined hands, learning to recognize the scent of herbs used to treat common illnesses, learning to stay silent because women were taught that silence is virtue. She grew up within rules that wrapped tightly around her daily life. Even her thoughts were expected to fit society's expectations. She was not allowed to ask too many questions, not allowed to argue, and if she showed too much intelligence, people would begin to feel uneasy, because a woman who knows too much was considered dangerous. On cold winter nights, when the wind whistled through the cracks and the house felt colder than the ground outside, she sat beside her mother, struggling through crooked stitches on a piece of cloth. Each stitch was an unspoken lesson. Women must be skillful. Women must be patient. Women must endure. The most frightening part wasn't the labour itself. The most frightening part was that she grew up never knowing she could live differently. For every woman around her, her mother, her grandmother, the women of her village, had lived the same life. No one showed her another path, and so, her childhood slipped away quietly, lost in the cycles of work, expectation, and silence. A life that had not yet begun was already pre-written from the moment she was born. Work that never ends, before dawn even wakes. Inside a small thatched house, a woman slowly opens her eyes. The room is still surrounded by darkness, the air cold, the only sound a soft whistle of wind slipping through the wooden cracks. But for her, the day has already begun. This was the reality of a medieval woman. No alarms, no clocks, only responsibilities that never slept. The moment her bare feet touch the cold dirt floor, the work begins. She starts the fire. A simple task to us, but for her, a daily struggle. The wood is damp, the cold numbs her fingers, smoke stings her eyes, but she persists, because the warmth of her family depends on that fire. By the time the first rays of sunlight slip through the wooden walls, she's already finished hours of labour, grinding grain, reheating yesterday's porridge, preparing bread, feeding livestock, hauling water from the well. Tasks that today might fill an entire day, she completes before breakfast. There are no days off, no weekends. No one asks if she's tired, and the work continues. She washes clothing in icy water, using homemade soap made from animal fat and ash. The smell is harsh, her hands burn and crack, but she keeps going. She cleans the animal stalls, spreads straw, mends torn clothes, tidies the house, and teaches her children simple lessons that might help them survive in a world that rarely forgives weakness. At midday, she eats quickly. A thin vegetable soup, a piece of old bread. She's the last to eat, and the one who eats the least. Then comes the long afternoon. She sits outside with a basket of wool spinning thread. Each delicate strand becomes part of a garment that will keep her family warm through winter. Her fingers are rough and stiff, yet they move steadily, patiently, day after day. All the while she watches the children, tends the cooking pot, guards the animals, keeps the house standing through wind and rain. Dozens of tiny responsibilities that outsiders would never notice, but that hold the family together. When night falls and darkness blankets the village, one might think she can finally rest. But no, it is simply the beginning of another round of work. A small oil lamp flickers, and she returns to the loom, mends worn cloth, prepares food for the next day, fixes small tools and gathers herbs if someone in the house is sick. She works until her eyelids grow heavy, until the fire burns low, until her body gives in to exhaustion. For medieval women, there was no line between day and night, only work flowing into more work, like a river with no end, and perhaps the saddest truth is that no one thought it extraordinary. No one thanked her. No one believed she deserved rest, because this was simply a woman's duty, and she lived it, carried it, and endured it, quietly, harsh rules and invisible bonds. The girl is now a little older, walking along the rough cobblestone path of her village. Every step must be careful, because the eyes around her scrutinize every movement, every gesture. Medieval society offered no freedom for women. Every word, every action had to follow invisible rules. If she laughed too loudly, she was called rude. If she went outside without permission, people whispered behind her back. If she spoke too much, she was deemed impolite. If she showed too much intelligence, people suspected her of bad intentions. Even her thoughts had to be careful. No one said she had to speak them aloud, but if anyone sensed disagreement, she could become a target of gossip, disdainful looks, or even punishment. She learned to stay silent, silent when insulted, silent when witnessing injustice. Silent even when she knew she was right. Sometimes she would wonder, do I have the right to live as myself? But the answer always hid between customs, rules, and society's expectations. A woman must be delicate, patient, and obedient. These rules were unwritten, yet present in every daily action. One small mistake could lead to scolding, punishment, or lifelong scrutiny. And this fear shaped the patience and caution that women had to learn from a very young age. They lived within the limits of their status, where freedom scarcely existed. Every laugh, every glance, every thought had to be measured. They didn't just survive, they adapted to every expectation, even when their hearts longed to resist. Yet these harsh rules taught them endurance, subtlety, and resilience in ways few in the modern world could imagine. And when night fell, the small oil lamp glowing softly in the house, the girl closed her eyes. But in her mind, she remembered all the rules to survive in a world that forgave no rebellion. Marriage, a bond without choice. Relax and imagine. The girl is now older, her eyes shining as she looks around the narrow world of her village. One of the most fateful experiences she will face is marriage. But in the Middle Ages, marriage was rarely her choice. She was not asked. She had no freedom to select the one she loved. Marriage was an exchange between families, a way to maintain land, property, and alliances. She might be just 13 or 14 years old, while her husband could be much older, with status, or completely unknown to her. The day she stepped into her husband's house was the day she had to accept a new life, a life that no longer truly belonged to her. Her first duty, to bear children, especially sons, as lineage was highly valued. She had to learn how to be a mother before fully growing up. She had to care for, teach, and protect tiny lives, even while she herself was still so young. But it was not just childbirth. She had to learn to be a wife, cooking, cleaning, caring for her husband, maintaining the household, keeping peace among in-laws. Each day blended into the next. leaving almost no time to think of herself. If she failed to produce a healthy son, she was considered less valuable. If she couldn't maintain harmony in the household, she faced criticism and scolding. Even her silent suffering went unnoticed. Yet through all these restrictions, she learned patience, subtlety, and sometimes quiet resilience. She learned to live in a world where nearly every decision was taken from her, and when night fell, the house dark except for the flickering firelight, the young woman closed her eyes, feeling the weight of a life already decided. Yet in her heart a spark of life remained, an instinct to survive helping her endure it all. Childbirth, a journey between life and death. The woman is now a young mother, stepping into a dark room where childbirth takes place. No doctor, no anesthesia, no clean room, no modern tools. Only a few women from the village, and the unpredictability of fate. The rapid breaths, the pounding heart, all merged together. Childbirth was a battle between life and death, and not every woman survived. The young mother endures excruciating pain, sometimes for hours. She clutches hands, bites her lip, and tries to hear the comforting words of those around her. But mostly, she must face it alone. In the darkened room, she feels each tiny heartbeat of the baby, each contraction, each fragile moment. Every cry, every groan is a bridge between life and death. If lucky, the child is born healthy, but if not, or if the mother collapses, everything could end quietly, silently, without explanation. Even if the baby survives, the mother must rise after the ordeal, returning to her daily work. Her hands are numb, her body weak, yet the family still depends on her. There is no rest, no one to care for her. She is mother, labourer, and pillar of the household all at once. Each childbirth is a test of courage, patience, and endurance. And medieval women, they endured it not just once, but many times throughout their lives. Each birth a survival story, a harsh lesson in the realities of life. Yet through all the pain they found hope. The baby's gaze, the warm breath in her hands, a weak but living smile. These small moments were their only reward, but enough to keep them moving forward. War and the loss of husbands. Rough dirt roads, small thatched houses, and in the distant sky, the clang of armour, shouts of soldiers, and the gallop of horses. War was almost constant. And for women, it was not just fear, but also the weight of daily survival. When their husbands went to fight, women took on all responsibilities. The fields, the livestock, the house, the children, the safety of everyone in the village. They became the pillars of their homes, even though they were young, fragile, and fearful themselves. Each day passed with unending worry, not knowing if the one they loved would return alive, not knowing if cavalry or mercenaries would sweep through the village tomorrow, not knowing if the crops would fail or floods and disease would steal everything they had worked for. News of the war came slowly, often just rumours, yet every rumour weighed heavily on their hearts. They learned to live with fear, but could not collapse. They had to be strong, so the family would not fall apart. They rose early, worked late, doubling and tripling their efforts to make up for the absent men. They watched the children, harvested the fields, prepared food, mended clothes, made medicine, and kept the village safe in the absence of male heads of households. Sometimes war took their husbands, brothers, fathers. Loss piled upon loss, grief overflowing. Yet medieval women had to learn to stand tall, to continue, to keep the flame of life alive for their families. And in the silence, in the darkness between fear and loss, they kept moving step by step resiliently, without complaint, without tears, only quiet courage, endurance, and endless patience. Old age and silent tears. Close your eyes and imagine the girl from years ago, now an old woman. Wrinkled skin, hair streaked with grey, hands hardened by time and labour. Her house is still small, the village still quiet, yet the burdens of everyday life have not left her. Old age in the Middle Ages did not bring the rest many modern people imagine. Work continued, only adjusted to the strength of her body. She still rises early, tends the fire, prepares meals, cares for grandchildren, mends clothes, and teaches the children what she still remembers. Each day remains a string of unending tasks, but now tears begin to fall quietly. The silent pains accumulated over a lifetime. Husbands, sons, friends have gone. Losses she can never forget, childhood dreams left behind, now only faint memories. She sits by her loom, the flickering lamp casting shadows on her aged face. The wrinkles tell stories of decades of endurance, of pain, childbirth, loss, and patience. No one fully understands, no one truly appreciates, but she knows. She has lived, living as her era demanded. In the quiet nights, she remembers her brief childhood, unfulfilled dreams, hard labour, her children, her husbands, and the losses in war. Yet in her eyes, a glimmer of resilience remains. Though frail, she still exists, still loves, still keeps the flame of life for the next generations. Old age is not an end, but a reflection of a life of endurance, patience, and courage. Every tear tells a story, every wrinkle is a witness, and every breath is proof of the extraordinary life of a medieval woman. Close your eyes and take a deep breath. Let your mind drift to the stories of a medieval woman, from her short childhood, harsh rules, marriage without choice, painful childbirth, war and loss, to her quiet old age. Despite all these trials, she survived. She kept moving forward. She cared for her family, taught her children and grandchildren, and kept the flame of life alive for the next generation. Her strength was not loud, not celebrated, yet it existed in every action, every breath, every silent gesture. She learned patience, endurance, and resilience. She learned to love and to sacrifice without needing acknowledgement. When you think of medieval women, don't only see fragility. Think of their quiet strength, a force unseen, yet enough to sustain families, villages, and culture across generations. And it is these silent stories, seldom told, that shape history. Through endurance and courage, these women lived, loved, and protected what mattered most. Let your mind feel it. Strength is not always loud, but it is always present. That quiet strength lives in every woman, in every family, in every step of history. And as you close your eyes, imagine the flickering lamp, the steady loom, the whispering wind, all bear witness to a life full of patience, endurance, and quiet strength. The life that medieval women lived and left for generations to come. Invisible accusations. The woman is now fully grown, walking through the village with rough hands and eyes keenly observing every movement. In the Middle Ages, beyond daily work, there existed an invisible force over women, the weight of unspoken accusations. A wrong word, a misplaced glance, a small action could be considered sinful. Women had to be careful with every word, every gesture, every act. These accusations were not written down, nor openly declared, yet they existed everywhere, in the village, among neighbours, from priests, even within their own family. If she spoke about injustice, she was seen as rude. If she laughed too loudly, she was deemed improper. If she displeased her husband or in-laws, she was considered unworthy or disobedient. And sometimes, simply being intelligent could make her a target of suspicion and gossip. Life became a mental game, where each step, each word had to be measured. No one forgave mistakes. No one helped her escape the sense of guilt. Each day she reminded herself, do what is right, be patient, endure. These invisible accusations became both armour and chains. They taught her caution, subtlety, and patience. But at the same time, they created fear, loneliness, and the feeling of never being enough. On quiet nights, sitting by her loom, hands tired but working steadily, she silently reflected on herself. She knew she had endured and continued to endure more than anyone might realize. But this was life, the rule, the destiny of a medieval woman.